Back 4 Blood is trash. I heard it was really rough. I heard it just looked kind of rushed and it didn't have a lot of personality and whatnot. It didn't stand out the way that Left 4 Dead did, and I think, for better or worse, Valve's influence kind of really made it work. You know, I think Valve just, whatever happened with Valve to solidify the characters and give them a bit more personality and make the characters look a little bit less generic style-wise, I think that really helped. I mean, it obviously more mainstream appeal with the style, but it worked, you know? I didn't really like Left 4 Dead 2 though. I will say that. The issue I had for Left 4 Dead 2 is it just felt too arcadey. It didn't feel serious anymore. It didn't feel, something clicked with me about the environment and the style and the mood and everything, and the second one just felt just kind of like I mean, I get it. It's like a multiplayer party game, and they furthered the party game aspect of it, but it just didn't really work. This was too fast. There was no tension. I didn't play it just to fucking run around and shoot zombies in waves. I like the pacing better in the first game. I definitely get it. I don't know the details for Back 4 Blood, but it just seemed like another game that functioned very similar, but like missing a lot of the nuance and stuff. And you know, I will admit I didn't see enough of it to really know. And while I was interested in getting into the beta or whatever, I think the one opportunity for me to like submit a request, I think I either didn't or I didn't get in. The reception seemed to be so poor, I just was no longer interested in it. I heard it ran really poor as well, and I don't think I had a 3080 Ti at the time. And I'm still sitting on a 4930K from 2014 too, so probably not a good idea to push boundaries, especially because like this game doesn't even run really well for me right now. I got a lot of massive like streaming and loading issues and stuff, and I think it's something like both decompressing textures, which is probably super demanding, and then I imagine it's probably just like all the world shit that's happening, all the whatever is not directly being sent to the GPU right away. And being a FromSoft game is probably a lot. Yeah, I think so. Oz, I don't know if they had a publisher or if it was just them. I'd imagine their publisher was forcing that upon them, of like from the original creators of this and that. The same way that what is the name of that game that just came out recently? The one that's like made by the original developers for Dead Space. I think people expected another Dead Space game, and I think what ends up happening is that these developers they're able to work somewhat independently of the original publisher or whatever. They create a new studio, not just Callisto Protocol, but all these other games too. They have two things. One is they're scrambling to do their own thing from the ground up, but the other thing is that they're basically saying, okay, now we don't feel bound by the IP, now we have the resources to do our own thing, and it's not going to necessarily match, even with their intentions, they're not intending to match Dead Space. So what ends up happening is that they go make this thing that doesn't resemble what people loved, that had only existed because of all the situation and compromise behind the original games. The original fans are fuming because it's not the thing that they love, and the people who are getting into it, like what they put together may not be good enough to be worth the attention of somebody who's never played the original games in the first place. That's why I'd be concerned about, for example, if, I guess not FromSoft just does whatever they want. But like, what's a good example of a series that I don't know, a good, if you're looking at other series, it would be like Devil May Cry or something, where they want to do something different. Devil May Cry 2 comes out, everybody hates it, and even though, I guess, Resident Evil comes out of that, the original fans are upset, and what if Resident Evil isn't any good? I guess more close to me might be the R-Type Final games, where R-Type Final 2 is a little bit less moody. Like, it's higher budget and lower budget at the same time. It's more like a platform for a bunch of levels and cool ships, which mostly are really good, to be fair. But it's not the same, like, super story-rich package, which is funny for a shmup, right? But yeah, like, it doesn't have the same tone and the same pacing as the original game. I'm sure if Gradius 6 came out, for example, it would not be either Treasure's more arcade style, like massively hyped up style, or it wouldn't be Gradius 3 again or something like that. Assuming they had the budget, because, Konami being Konami, the only way that's ever going to happen is by wrestling out from under them and hoping that somebody else can. Yeah, I've been working on games. I can't really say where, especially now that I work on AAA stuff. I've been working on games starting at like a mid-tier indie studio back in the day. Probably since, I think, late 2008 or so. And then I moved at some point in 2009. No, I remember exactly when I moved. I flew out, I believe. I can't remember if it was the first flight to check out the studio and meet everybody, or the second flight. I flew on, one of them was September 11th. And I'm just like, this is not a good day to fly. But then again, people were like, maybe this is the great time to fly, because everyone's freaking out and paranoid about it. But I'm not dead, so, that's something. I did get the flu the first 2 years there. So I lost, like, my entire holiday break was shot just, like, melting into my couch, trying to eat saltines and not die. Pretty much. One of the people I worked with says that I still look at games more like a player than a developer. I think that person was somewhat rude, and I don't know if it was intentional, or if he's... I could see him as a kind of person who would manipulate perceptions in his favor. So I never figured out if that was him being rude or him trying to give me some weird ass backhanded or not compliment. It's back and forth, because like if you look at things like a player only, then you miss a lot of shit. So it can be a very bad thing if you only look at games like a player. If you can temper it though as a developer, then it's a good thing, because you stay relatively down to earth, even though you understand all of the bullshit realities that make it difficult to make games and make it impossible to get exactly what you want on either side, developer or player side. Based on my interactions with that other developer though, I think it probably was a negative thing, because that particular developer, I felt like they were more they were like deep in the sort of like, you have to play the developer game, you have to play all the bureaucratic garbage to sell ideas and get what you want done, and I just don't subscribe to that. I'm more of the kind of person who would rebel against the system as much as I can. Even though I can't talk about what I'm working on, the current like massive section of work I'm doing right now, I don't know what if it counts as, if you could call it a project or what, but the current thing within the games that I'm working on right now, I guess, is probably, I don't know, subsection feature. I had to fight for it, but it's going to take me like 6 to 9 months to finish. I think it's going to be great work, but like it's just so much fucking work, and I'm diving into a lot of stuff that I've not touched before. I guess sections of code that I've not touched before, especially, and it would be like it would touch a lot of the other systems for the stuff that I work on. Can't really explain what it is, but yeah, like I had to fight for it. That's the kind of person I am. Like if I can, I will try to make a case for a thing that I want to do if I think it's good for whatever I'm working on at the time. I tend to lean towards like, let me make these features, like if I'm putting together a feature or if I'm making something work, I'll try to make it more forward compatible, even though try to account for technical debt on the way in rather than having to like fight for cleaning it up later, which will get me in trouble, because in the past places I've worked at where you're not allowed to accommodate that sort of thing and minimize technical debt on the way in. Instead, you build up technical debt and then you're like, can I please fix this? And then they're like, nope, it works, let's ship it. Luckily, the place I work at isn't like that. The place I work at definitely is in the camp of like, we will adjust plans and cut features if we have to in order to make things work. They still try to be as forward thinking as they can though, to not have to deal with that. But rather than make people crunch to death, they will accommodate instead, which is nice. There's still some crunch though, which kind of sucks. Luckily I managed to insulate myself from it. For the most part, I'm usually very ahead, and the project I'm working on right now, well, not even project, the milestone or task or subset system, whatever we're calling this, is so big that it's difficult to know where I even am time-wise.